something happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Occupy TV. This is episode number 37. I'm Jean Stacy, and I'm here tonight with Sparrow and Nick. And they're going to be talking to us a little bit about life on the streets. In talking to y'all previously, because we've been friends for a while, I know both of you are college students. You've been to college, you're en route to college, and it just doesn't fit my stereotype of who might be living on the streets. So I'm very curious as how did you wind up on the streets? What happened? What were your choices? What weren't?
Go ahead.
Well, mine was pretty much, it was a family member, or a family matter that over-escalated, and it just ended up I couldn't be in that environment anymore, and other than that environment, there was nothing else. And when I tried to go back, it was like, it's too, you've already turned, you know, you can't go back, so.
It can be very difficult.
Yeah.
How old were you, Nick?
It was in the last 2 years, 3
Okay,
years.
and so how old are you now?
I'm 24.
24. Okay, and what about you, Sparrow?
I guess initially it started when I was about 18. It was a kind of a family issue as well as a religious persecution.
Yes.
Yeah, came from a kind of a small town, and not a lot of people liked gay people over there, and I seemed to be one of like maybe 20 gay people within like a 90-mile radius, and in the town I was living in, I was like, I believe I was the only one. I didn't even meet another gay person until after I was 20.
Right, so that made it pretty uncomfortable, not only in your home, but in the town as well.
Yeah, it was just really biased feelings, I guess, towards things that people don't understand.
Right, I was very surprised when we were all together in the camp at how many of the young people who were in the camp were there because the streets were actually safer feeling to them than being at home, which says a lot about our society, I think.
Yes.
And just the fact that young people have to be on the street as a choice because home, it is better than home. So you were on the streets for a number of years. Did you work during that time, or?
Yeah, I was never able to basically get a job that made enough for me to save first, last, and deposit on any
Yes.
place. So basically, I would. I've always had lots of friends in different areas from just moving around and traveling, or like meeting people right away, and they're like, "Hey, man, you can sleep on my couch," and I'd stay on their couch and get a job and start giving them money for rent. And so I usually always had a job, but I would definitely move like once every 6 months or so because the area or the situation didn't feel right.
Yeah, I think each time you were in a home, probably you felt like you were the extra person without their own bedroom or without their own facility.
Exactly, and I don't like feeling like I'm a burden on other people, which is one of the reasons why I've actually been on the streets before, is because I feel like I want to earn my own way, and sometimes it's just a really high price to pay.
That's a theme we heard a lot from folks, is they wanted to live however they had to live in order to maintain their dignity.
Under their own ruling.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that sounds like it's very important to you too, Nick.
Yes.
What have you been doing primarily in the years that you've been on the street?
Well, these last years, it's pretty much, it's been 3 years consistently with one facility visit for job training for about 6 months. And before that, you know, it was just here and there. But what I've been doing regularly is it's just a daily schedule of, you know, eat. Nurture yourself, keep your brain happy, keep your body physically happy, and then go to sleep and get up the next day and do the same thing. And it's just lots of walking.
I've seen you quite a lot in the last months, and I'm always, because I know you are currently on the streets,
Yes.
I'm always amazed at how together you are and how healthy you at least appear.
Yeah.
And how logical your thinking is and how you're strategizing your life. Tell people a little bit more, because you mentioned food, which is kind of a basic item. What's involved when you're homeless in terms of getting food?
It's usually food boxes, feeds. Thank God for the dining room and
Yeah.
Food for Lane County that's able to put in there 4 days a week and, give us at least one meal a day to keep us healthy enough to, get up and go to the other places and get meals from there so that you can actually grow and expand not only your body but your brain.
Right.
But
I understand that a lot of the churches have, for instance, a breakfast once a week or something like that. Are those very available?
Yes. They used to, yes. In the past 3 months or so, I'd say they've cut it down to 2 feeds every 3 weeks.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And do you know why that's happening?
It's because it's 2 churches that do like the weekend feeds, and one church will do every first, third one Saturday. The other one will do second and fourth. That's how it was. Now they just do 1, 4, 2, and 4.
Okay. And part of the problem, as I understand it, that the food box are a blessing, but they're a mixed blessing because a lot of the food is food that has to be cooked.
Yeah, and food that's been previously frozen and stored in lockers that freezing doesn't, or when you let it sit and freeze, it's not going to taste as good as something that came
It's not
fresh
nutritious
out of the
either.
ground. You take a bite out of a piece of bread, it's like, is that an ice cube in the middle of it?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I try to imagine because I've gone camping for pleasure, and I know with a family, it took us all day just to prepare food, eat it, clean up after it. When you don't have your sink and you don't have your refrigerator, you don't have your stove. It's very time consuming, even when you have the supplies. So I can imagine that just the logistics, as you all have said, of staying fed.
Obtaining the food.
Yeah, getting it in the first place. What about you, Sparrow, with those issues?
Well, honestly, I'm a musician, so like whenever I was in a really bad spot as far as needing food, I'd play my guitar in the corner and spange that way.
And that's permitted now in
Yes,
Eugene?
it is now permitted in Eugene to do that, thanks to Ali Valkyrie and her no permits for art. But it is a completely, like you said, there is a whole different type of, it's a different lifestyle, it's a different agenda, it's direct care of one's things instead of like, it does take longer to get your food and to prepare it, find a place to eat it, and not get harassed. But when that becomes something that you do every day, it's one of those things that becomes very simple. Little skills like sewing or patchwork, you trade those with other people that have excess of things. It's like a small little world. Hey, you've got a computer, let me fix that for you while you do this for me, or if not, it comes back around. Like small skills, most of the people on the streets that I know can do some amazing things, just skill-wise. And honestly, if you take away most people that have a lot of money's money and you put them in the same situation, they're not going to last very long at all. And it's only because it's an intentional decision while doing so to, I don't know, it's very hard to put into words, I guess.
Noticed that there was just an enormous looking out for each other.
Yeah, it's
on the streets when folks were in camp. I was just overwhelmed with the idea that somebody might have 3 cookies that they'd just gotten, and if 2 other people walked up, they got shared. And I don't think I've always done that when my friends walked up. So these things are, pretty impressive. The other thing that you mentioned was being hassled. When people who are living on the streets are hassled, who generally is doing that hassling, or what are the situations?
The police.
Yeah. Either that or just a bigotry from people that don't like homeless people that cause enough noise to make the police actually do something. Because they have to listen to the people with money because apparently because you're homeless, you've never paid taxes and never put into their police fund.
Right. I know, and there's a lot of talk now that there's so many people here in Eugene as well as throughout the country that are about this far away. They say one paycheck away from being homeless, which is a pretty scary thing.
Most of the people that I've known my entire life have been one paycheck away from being homeless.
Right.
My parents, who my dad's had his same job his whole life, if you were to look in their fridge right now, all dollar microwave dinners. Mm-hmm. And that's just so they can have a house. They eat the worst food they possibly can just because it's affordable, just because they have a house.
Right. It's an interesting, is the nicest word I can use, time in the economy when an awful lot of people who don't have many skills for living outside and in dangerous situation are entering the streets. I think we were all so upset when the camp broke up, and there were great promises of protections to be set up and new facilities and whatnot. What have you all seen come as a result?
Honestly, we've had circles with the police where I think there was either 4 to 7 of them and then 4 to 7 people from the Occupy side that had a homeless advocates in there as well, obviously. They say that they'd like to have a peaceful transition with us, but like the very next night they raided a whole bunch of people that were underneath the bridge and actually took all of their sleeping bags, all of their clothes, all of their food, all of everything that they had that was not on them. And when you're homeless, your gear is your life. Like, your gear is what keeps you safe. It has everything that you could possibly need it. Without it, you are actually quite literally homeless. If you have your gear, no matter where you're at, you're not homeless.
Right.
And honestly, I've lived in a house since the Occupy broke up, because I was staying with Scotty Perry, which is an amazing man.
Yes.
And now I'm living with my fiance LJ near the Whitaker, and I still can't go anywhere without my backpack.
You get very addicted to it, don't you?
I can see it right now. You know,
yeah, you want to keep your eye on.
You know, and I realize it's getting heavier because I just added a new sewing kit in there, just in case something happens and I'm not there, at home. Which is interesting. Have
you had experiences also with the police?
Yes, many.
What types of things do you find happening?
They don't seem to approve of us being in one place for more than any duration. I mean, their motto, it seems to be just keep moving, and that's how it was before the Occupy all started up. And after the Occupy broke up, it ended up being just keep moving. Trespassing, just keep moving. Your dog doesn't have a tag, just keep moving. There's a straw next to your foot, here's a $300 ticket. You know, it's just getting worse and worse, and I can see that it's because of the fact that the people want the police to do their job more, because there's more people out there that are, they want something bad enough that they'll steal it. And they'll steal, and the police are going to be reinforced by more, and they just have to be pushed and pushed harder by their higher ups, so they don't put our actual feelings and rights and our abilities or what we are into their consideration of walking up on us and at 3 o'clock in the morning and saying, just keep moving, 3 times, 4 times a night.
Even though you're just quietly sleeping someplace and not bothering anyone.
Yeah, even though I'm just trying to get my sleep. I mean, after 48 hours, I don't think I can really function without sleep.
No, and sometimes people also wonder if that's almost intentional, that they really are not just trying to move you on, but they really are trying to get you in a mental condition where you're more likely to break a law or more likely to do something they can cite you for.
Well, it's really known on the streets right now, as far as everybody that I run into that I deal with, is they will try to get you aggravated. Mm-hmm. They will try. They have actually imported cops from other places that have been in trouble for over-aggressive behavior.
Right.
And so they're trying to get us to overreact. A clear point of that is when they had slammed one of their occupiers down and pepper sprayed the other person after breaking one of their ribs by hitting them to knock them down. And those were 2 women.
Right, and this was an altercation over
Absolutely.
children
Over
playing
children.
in the bushes.
And there were children present during all that. What I want to know if any domestic activity that happens in front of a child becomes a federal offense, which is something that I was told a while ago I haven't looked into, but if that is, if it carries more weight with a child present, how is it okay for the police officers to put undue physical misharm to a child's parent in front of the child?
When it was his own fault in the first place.
When it was his
Right.
own fault in the
'Cause
first place.
He was, yeah.
It was a sticker altercation.
Yeah.
If a parent says, I do not want my child to have that, it's a parent's choice to decide what it is and what is not acceptable for their child to have.
Absolutely.
It is no one's right to overbid that, regardless of whether or not you have a badge on.
Right, and I think a lot of the people who were witness felt that the act of giving the stickers was a bit facetious anyway, because the officer or another officer had just ticketed each of the women $150 each because the child was playing in the bushes at a public event. So there seems to be a pattern that I've seen of just really gross discrimination against the homeless. And I think we have to blame the police, but I also think the city council, bears a certain amount of responsibility because they are, quote, the boss through John Ruiz, the city manager. And they establish things like the exclusion zone that we have found are used primarily against homeless people.
Yeah.
I agree. I believe John, the city manager, has a lot on his plate.
He does.
And I think that it's going to be our responsibility as political activists, not just nomadically inclined or residentially challenged people, to continue to put that pressure on them, as well as the rest of the Occupy or whatever political statement. Like, if we can force their hand to do what is absolutely right in one area, then we can continue on to education. We can continue on getting our Montessori schools up and running, so we can actually start correcting the fact that our children are growing up completely dumbed down by American culture, and start enculturating real citizens that will really promote the evolution of mankind instead of repressing it. That's our next goal.
Oh, that's something that impressed me too, Sparrow, in the camp, was as I have a lot of my friends that I find it very difficult to talk to anymore because they're simply not interested in what's really going on in the world. They prefer to watch whatever on TV, play with face crack or whatever. And I found a wonderful willingness on the part of the people who we met that were living in the street to really rise to the occasion. And I thought it was just kind of wonderful that the people who are on the street, so many of you are living your own quiet revolution against all the things that the rest of us are doing. Someone was saying something the other day to me about homeless folks and applying some of the old stereotypes. And one of the quickest responses is, look at your carbon footprint. Look at the damage you're doing in this world. And then be critical of a homeless person who has a carbon footprint of about 0.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little tiny thing, but it's a big perspective into who's doing what.
That's actually,
in this world.
That perspective makes me laugh all the time, actually, because like if you look at how much it costs somebody that lives in a house to live a day, we could live off of that for like months,
Yeah,
and it's
definitely.
actually
Right.
really funny.
And you're not creating all that
I
trash.
could live off
Exactly.
the gasoline that they use in one day.
Exactly.
I
Give me
know.
a gas can with the gasoline that they would use in a day, and I could get enough money to feed myself 2 or 3 meals in a day.
Yeah, I have a feeling that y'all are living the future now that many of us will be living over the next years to come.
It's a
We're
realization.
in such an unsustainable situation at this point. And I really do worry about those folks who have the most. How are they then going to handle not having it all?
They're probably not going to do so well.
It's not going to do very well at all, because when people get confused or backed up into a hole and they're injured, meaning, that crutch of money has been broken off their leg,
And their
they're
self-respect
going to end
getting
up
taken
being
away.
violent. They're
Yeah.
going to end up it's
And-
not going to be. pretty.
Yeah, and they don't have any, like, a lot of people don't really have enough self-respect to change. Well, okay, that's not correct. Self-respect is actually, I'm using that word incorrectly. A lot of people that have been living in one situation for a long period of time loses the ability to understand the fact that they have the ability to change something that they don't like.
Yes.
When you're homeless, you have several opportunities a day because things are constantly changing, and it's your conscious energy that is put in every single moment that makes what you're doing and who you are. So it's a lot easier, I would say, for a homeless person to not be peer pressured into something, or to talk a homeless person into something. It's going to be a lot harder to do that.
Yeah, a lot more independence.
A lot more. And the nomadically inclined, which I would like to say I am, because I have been living everywhere. It's been hard to be homeless sometimes. It's got its hard times, like when our socks are wet and we don't have any place to sleep and we haven't eaten for a couple of days and there's somebody that wants to kick your butt. You know, whatever, that happens. It does happen, but it's a better life.
What do you think, the Mayor's Task Force has the Opportunity Eugene Project, Sparrow, you worked on that task force, has now put forth an agenda of having a village created, of having a day center that would be closer to the downtown, of having a lot of laws changed. What do you think, if these things do come to fruition, if in fact there is a village, which it probably would initially certainly be tents, do you think things like these are positive things for the homeless? Would they make a big difference in someone's life? For some people, not for others? How do you see the importance or non-importance of the village and the day center in particular?
I don't know much about the village, but I do know that the people who live on the streets and the people that sit at home and watch their television and, get on FaceCrack, we both have two completely different lifestyles. It's going to be hard to transition some of those people back into homes just because of the fact that walls are scary sometimes, when you're out there. And it's just 10 times easier to start up a village in the middle of the woods that has everything that they lived off of anyways, minus all the trash that all the people throw out on their party nights or anything. It would be pretty much paradise. It would be complete Taoism, and it's very important that the homeless are able to implement a village into an area that they choose.
Right. There have been some pretty well-established, villages here in this area, and they say really the gravest problems are just what you mentioned, the fact that there's a trash issue. There are usually no formal toilets, which a sanitation issue can be, but that the direst problem is the police breaking up the camps, and this is evidently a national pattern.
Yeah.
If there wasn't laws against how we dispose of our black water, I'm pretty sure that we could use compost toilets. I mean, to be honest, there's a way. If we took all of the rules, the rules and regulations out of it, the laws and ordinances as far as the no camping laws, and the ordinances that only allow a certain number of people to live on a piece of property, regardless of who the property is owned by, we would be able to create exactly what we would like to see, which is a sustainable reality. Down at the Occupy, keep in mind, they had to shut us down because we were operating so well.
Right.
I mean,
there were some very, very good things happening, and we think that some of the bad things that were happening were actually things that were planted by the police.
Yes, I actually witnessed one of the plants. So.
Well, I mean, it's interesting.
That one at the end I witnessed when he...
Yeah, we've been on the streets forever, and every single person that caused a problem was somebody we've never seen before.
Right.
How does that happen? It doesn't.
Yeah.
And we would be very easy to pick up who it was that was starting the problems, because it was always the new person that we've never met.
Yeah.
Right. Well, the new village that they're talking about would be self-managed by the homeless. They wouldn't be able to choose the location, which would be ideal, because it will be on some piece of land that either the city or somebody donates, makes available. But other than that, there should be a lot of freedoms within the camp.
Yeah.
Not enough, but better than certainly what we have at this time, it would seem.
And it doesn't have to be completely a plebonic type of village. I mean, we don't have to be living out of tents or anything. I mean, within the homeless community, 99% means there are carpenters, there are concrete masons, there are plumbers, there's electricians, there's everything that you need right there to fulfill a building type of permit.
Right.
And it's just, no, don't do it. Don't do it.
I think we might figure out something. I don't know yet. I have big hopes for the first time.
Yeah.
They may just get smashed, but it's certainly something for us to all, continue working on. You mentioned to me once, Sparrow, that things are very different for women on the streets in a way than they are for those of us who are housed. Can you kind of elaborate on that?
Yeah, actually, I'm going to go ahead and be completely honest and take one for the female team at this point and say, in modern American culture, it's the white male that is the privileged, seems to be the most privileged out of all of the classes. On the streets, however, it is reversed. It's like a reverse gender privilegeality type thing. I don't really know the correct term, but like I said, completely honest, if Nick and I were to go do the exact same things on the streets, I would come up with more resources than he would, by probably about 30 to 40%.
And why is that?
It's because I'm female. And I really don't know, other than the fact that I think that homeless people are scary, and male homeless people are scarier.
And female homeless people are innocent, and
They're
they
stuck
need
on the
everybody
streets.
else to help them.
Yes.
That's,
in the
I can see
the higher
what
class.
you're saying.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, you can't even. I mean, if he was to apply for the Oregon Health Plan, he would never get it. I would have more of a shot of getting it, but I'm
With
not.
a mental disability, I could.
With a mental disability, he could. Somewhat.
But that's
so
all. And you're taking too good a care of yourself to have a mental disability, basically.
I could go after disability, but then you have other people that are not. You have other people that are mad at you that aren't yelling, "Get a job," and they're saying, "Quit living off my tax dollars." So I'd feel way too guilty about doing any
You
of
prefer
that.
your independence.
Exactly.
When you go back to school, what are you looking at doing?
I'm going into law.
And what has inspired that?
Observing how this entire movement and the past year has panned out, and seeing how many laws the police, the judges, the council members, whoever may be up higher in charge, seeing how many laws that they break compared to how many laws I break a day, it's kind of it's amping me up to want to actually fight it and catch them in those law breaks, and be able to be on the side that's, prosecuting them and saying, you were standing on this part, that's my property, you were trespassing, you're going to pay me $280. That's just the simplest way to put it. It gets
Trying to
more
kind of
deep.
equalize how the law is
Yeah.
interpreted and applied.
Exactly, the consistency of it. I mean, they say don't ride your bike on the sidewalk while you're in the street and they're riding on the sidewalk, and it's
Right.
like, okay, you ride my bike, I'll drive your car, you can get hit by a car and
Right.
I'll be safe. It's
Yeah,
just-
things get pretty confusing.
Or they'll put out a fire in a teepee and then give somebody a ticket for parking in the wrong in a no parking zone for 2 minutes. I saw that happen.
Right.
I was like, really? These people are going to freeze to death, and you're worried about this inanimate object parked next to this
I
inanimate
know.
object.
The priorities definitely get mixed up.
And it's the conscience too. I mean, when you say that, it's like, but no, it can't just be people in the teepee that they put the fire out. It's children.
Well, yeah,
I mean,
it's women and children. It was a
it's
women
like-
and children's teepee. Yeah.
It's like there's a difference between keeping a community safe and having morals. I mean, a little fire compared to freezing of below freezing conditions. I mean,
Right, you're referring back in the camp.
Back when the camp was
When they
going.
wouldn't allow people who were out in literally below freezing weather to have even a small watched fire,
Yeah.
even in a large area
Well,
where
yeah.
many people were gathered and awake.
Well, not only
because they
that, but it
can't
was
put
a
their finger in
teepee.
it.
It was a sacramental teepee that was actually put up by someone that does that for their religious practice. And the actual makeup of the religious practice in the teepee was a fire, which has been used religiously by the Indians for a very long time and should have been protected under the freedom of religion.
Right.
And it was not. There was also an instance where a smudge stick was knocked out of one of our occupiers' hands and stomped out when they were trying to make a sacred circle to calm people down because of
Right.
the police involvement. And the cops got involved and didn't allow us to smudge any longer and told us that they couldn't use discrimination because a smoldering smudge stick was still fire. And at that point, one of our occupiers says, well, there's so many people here smoking cigarettes and that's smoldering just as bad as the
Right.
thing was. So it's obvious that they're using discretion when it comes to corporate anomalies. I'd like to see this whole town join together and get every single corporate member out of here. No corporate businesses, all local franchise.
Have a community.
And of course,
It's
we as
completely
citizens have a
possible.
lot to do with that because we're
Absolutely.
the ones who decide where we're going to spend our money.
Absolutely.
Do you want a self-sustained community that is ever growing, or do you want a government-sustained community that is just going to keep taking more taxes to keep you living on that paycheck day to day to day,
Right.
and just worry about your rent? I mean, which one would you choose, and why are you still going with, the latter? I mean, it's like in the movies, doesn't the good guy always win?
Yeah.
It's
In the
like
movie.
the bad guys
In the
are the
movie.
most popular in this
Yeah.
movie.
Exactly.
Things do seem very tipsy-turvy.
Yes.
And the way it's very hard to look at things around us and find that they're logical. I was surprised at how many women, and again, that's probably sensitivity right there to women, were in the camp that were in their 50s, early 60s, not ill, so they couldn't get any kind of welfare to speak of. They had food stamps, some of them. Most of them had been working 20, 30 years and had recently been laid off. And these were the folks that you were talking about in part. They'd had no clue of what they could do. Several of them had had a sick family member and they'd paid for the medical care instead of their rent or their mortgage. And
Had
that's
no
why they
clue.
were on the streets.
I ran into several of them actually. There's one lady in particular, I can't remember her name, but she qualified for several services through the government, but it was so backed up that the waiting list was like 2 years long or something.
Right. For a lot of the things. And I always remember the meeting that they called us into with the city. And they said, how are we going to transition people from the camp to something else? And of course they said, we have nothing else. This was all the social service agencies. I think they gave out one bed. When the camp closed down, they could only transition one person.
I believe you're
So
correct.
everything
yeah.
is just terribly overburdened. And we have so many people. I think we figure we have over 4,000 homeless folks right here in the Eugene area, Eugene-Lane County area. That's a lot of people.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Well, think about the ones out on the Butte and everywhere else.
Well,
you
the
know?
ones that get tired of the areas that others are in, they spread out. It's,
Right.
the spreading
And some
is key.
find a couch for a while, evidently, and are there intermittently and then back out on the streets.
We do have to keep in mind the seasonals too.
Yeah.
And I've heard rumors
that don't
that
come out in
even
the summer.
some of the reliable dumpster diving spots for food are frequently empty, that people who have been relying on those spots now have literally competition for those dumpsters. Are y'all seeing that type of thing, or is it that burdened in the areas that you've been hearing about?
I do know exactly what's with that. I mean, it's the guy that gets up the earliest has
The best shot.
dibs on. I mean, the guy that gets up at 6 o'clock and works, I mean, he's rewarded at the end of the day with a hot meal and all that. But I mean, the guy gets up at 6 o'clock in the morning is going to have the money through raiding the dumpsters that these guys have been relying on, I mean, to feed themselves.
Right.
So
What about the emotions of people on the street? What do you think are some of the dominant, just the feelings, what's going on for people?
They're really, honestly, since the Occupy campsite was taken down, the occupiers and the other homeless that were either not as well known or not as well in the limelight have been really harassed. It's getting harder for them. And there's definitely, I mean, I know that outwardly EPD protects the laws. Inwardly, those laws no longer actually protect the people that they were supposed to. Now, there are some cops that realize this and no longer want to do harm, and there are some cops that actually enjoy the fact that they can get us for anything that they want. Me personally, I don't really feel like I have to worry about anything. I feel like if I wanted to, I could skip down the street jaywalking with a joint and
your shirt off.
And my shirt off and not get talked to. But I feel like if he leans up against a building for 2 seconds, he's going to get
$500 ticket.
$500 ticket, you know?
That's happened.
And it's unfortunate. And the thing is I don't see any reason why there are some of these cops still on the streets. There are some very specific ones that I don't even think their bosses are too happy with them right now, you know.
Well, one of the issues in Eugene is we have a very strong police union. And I understand that's one of the things that's making it very, very hard for those who are in command positions to do much. And that's tied into our city charter and how the city council can interact with the police and also the police union. And it's not a pretty picture.
I actually tried looking into the police union and have not found any information on it at all online. The only information I found about a police union is a national one that corresponds with the higher upper-ups as far as like Homeland Security and such. Homeland Security, interestingly enough, is starting to integrate itself into a lot of different aspects into your Eugene life, if you didn't know.
Yes, I did.
If you get onto the LDT bus, LTD, yeah, and you look up and you see the camera with all the LED lights on there, I looked that up. Well, that little camera is not only watching you, but all of the information that it is taking in is stored online and can be easily accessed by anybody in Homeland Security at any time.
We've seen a lot of Homeland Security here in town. Frankly, I'm much more impressed with the local Homeland Security and their professionalism than I have been with EPD.
I completely agree.
They're protecting us from EPD right now, actually.
Exactly.
Yes, I agree.
And I met with the supervisor here the other night, and was just very impressed that he was absolutely going to enforce the laws, but he was going to do it in a way that allowed us to have as much of our basic rights as possible.
Yeah.
And that's a totally different attitude from EPD. I see them as the reverse.
I agree. Well, I think in this case that Homeland Security has to abide more by the federal Constitution because it is higher up to the top of the pyramid, if you would. So they are going to be watched. But as soon as the time switches for them to not be friendly, they will not be friendly and abide by those rules.
I think that's
so
absolutely.
They can be nice and protect us now while they're putting their cameras and their microphones everywhere, and then once it's time, it's time. It's personally how I feel about it.
Once somebody hacks into their system and steals millions of dollars.
Which, you know, WikiLeaks already had a problem with that. I think that's part of what spurred a lot of stuff, as well as that gentleman setting himself on fire, just because of the fact that humanity is no longer human.
That's one of the things I think the homeless situation reflects more than anything, is how much people have lost touch with an ethical position, whether it's those folks who claim to be very religious and aren't doing those things which the Bible clearly teaches that should be done. And I'm not quite certain how in their own minds they get around what the Bible says and their behavior. How do they reconcile those two things. But that's one of the things we talked a lot about at the camp is what is the new kind of civil society that might exist. And I think many of us saw those who are living on the streets, not to over-romanticize it in any way, but as living with more giving and taking back and forth, more tolerance, less judgment. There's certainly times when the violence is very much there.
Yes.
But during the peaceful times, there's enormous amount of cooperation.
And normally the violence only comes when it's a direct threat to a family unit, which is a group of people that have decided to help each other out and share everything that they have with those group of people as a collective, as a unit that travels around together to make sure the safety, because you can't just settle down in one spot and just go to sleep, not even in a day. So how do you expect to do that in your life?
Right.
So you have people that do that, those kind of things for you. If one person needs to sleep, the other ones watch out, make sure that they know what's going on. Anybody rolls up, hey man, wake up, let's go, you know. So I honestly, I've lived on the streets and off the streets since I've been in Eugene. When I first got here, I got a job and was staying at somebody's house and went to school, went through 2 years of college. My financial aid, you know, got taken because there was a cut in financial aid. I had good grades, I had great grades. Went to appeal it. Government wanted over almost $1,000 for me to put my appeal through, which I did not have.
Right.
And so it went into default and ended up back on the streets. But since through all of that, what I've learned is I've been to college. I've been in the college area. I've been in the home area. I've been in the religious area. I've been on the streets, and I've been in homes and roommate situations. And throughout all of those, I've never actually seen the type of loyalty between people that call each other family like I have on the streets. Yeah, there's a lot of drama. It's a lot of like high school. But when you have nothing but trying to survive and dealing with other people every day, there's going to be drama. Especially people that aren't mentally old enough to understand that how they're treating people isn't exactly the best way, but they're going to do whatever they have to survive, because that's how it is.
Right.
So there's going to be some conflict of like personalities and some aggression and everything, but here in Eugene, there aren't people toting guns. I mean, there might be a couple, but you don't hear about drive-bys. Like,
now, we've been hearing that there are some of the gangs from the South that have been moving in recently. Is that just talk, or is that something that's happening?
Yes.
Is something that's happening?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing, or?
It's not horrible, but the violence increases. It's usually it's usually only if there's big issues between, say,
I'm not expecting
rivals.
I'm not expecting any fatalities regardless.
What are the
Well,
gangs
with
here
the ones-
for?
With the ones that are coming in, it's completely possible.
Well, I'm not,
but
yeah.
it's-
Well, I don't know. I have to be optimistic at this point. So the gangs that are coming up from the South are either here for a few different reasons. One, they're getting too crowded and they need to move. And honestly, Eugene's prime. It's a beautiful place. It's known even in the red light district over, you know. So it's a known place. I knew about it before I ever moved here. So not only that, but the Occupies kind of put this place on the map. It's shown who the street leaders kind of are. It's shown in like on television. Like, this is what's going on. This is what's happening. Like, honestly, for the street families to be involved in this kind of thing makes us slightly vulnerable, because it kept most of us in one spot while the rest of our streets kind of got taken over.
Right.
We haven't really got back to where we were beforehand with making sure that things are safe and everything else. So they're either here to take over or to settle a score or to just have a
Are
grudge.
drugs
transport.
involved? Sale of drugs? I mean, is this a
yes.
market that
I'm
they're
sure
looking
that there
for,
is.
or-
We actually saw an increase of drugs coming into the area once the Occupy started. It was from people that we'd never seen before. So I'm assuming that there was a large group of people that were following the Occupy around because it was a great market.
Yeah. Well, we saw it.
Yeah, we
when-
saw it. I mean, it was apparent.
Well, we see it even now with the protests. When somebody hears somebody say "Occupy," they're like, where can I score? Can I get some? Can I get? I mean, this is Occupy, right? And it's like, yeah, this is Occupy, but it's not for that. It's a protest, not a camp, and not
Right.
a place to find your drugs. Not
Right. That was one of the things that happened with Occupy and with a lot of the homeless folks who weren't involved with drugs.
Oh, yeah.
Is those who were involved with drugs, whether they were homeless or not, tried to move in. As we said, some of them were no doubt brought
Oh,
by
yeah.
the police to actually target our area. But it was one of the things that made it very disruptive in the camp. And I think the folks that are planning through this mayor's task force, the new village, is going to be totally drug and alcohol free, so that it's just for the people who want to have that particular lifestyle for right now.
Yeah.
You know.
I agree. I think as a movement, as a piece of the movement, the Occupy in Eugene had a less difficult time with all of the other problems that, like, there was like 5 or 6 problems that each of the occupations had that were completely similar. We seem to have a lot less issues with those things, to where that's why we had to be closed down, because, well, we weren't really dealing dope.
Well, we were one of the
doing
longest
this, and we
running
weren't doing that, and we weren't doing
camps,
this,
too.
and yeah, all the other occupies were like, oh, this is going on, you're going to get shut down, and this is going on, so you're going to get shut down, and we're like, yeah, we saw these things kind of starting to happen, but we got rid of them because we know it was bad for our movement and our families.
Yeah, and I think if it had been left to the local council here, we did have enough votes to continue to stay open. But I think the police in particular went under a national agenda, a mandate to shut down all the occupiers. I mean, it was clear. They just went pop, 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 pop right after a inner city telephone call. So,
suppress the non-dumb people.
yeah, so they set us up.
Well, not only that, but I mean, it seemed extremely obvious to me that when you look at the council members and our mayor, I can see that they all know that it's the right thing to do to make a sleeping space available. It was the right thing to do to allow us to take care of each other and ourselves, and it was the right thing to do to allow people that weren't homeless to join with us. Now, there were certain people who, like the national agenda of getting rid of the Occupy, there are certain people, and I'm just going to say it, you know, I believe Polling is one of them, I believe Clark is one of them, where they're pushing this other agenda that does not support the actual reality. I think they're kind of, well, we can't let them be homeless. We can't support that. Like, we're going to be allowing them to be homeless, when it's like, okay, dude, here's the deal. I'm homeless, so therefore I am. I'm sorry. Like, if I couldn't be homeless, if I could be in a house right now doing all the shit the things that you would like me to do, I apologize, then I would.
Right.
But
that
I
was
can't.
what astounded us at the task force, is people who had really, I think, dedicated huge parts of their life to helping people who are homeless and who have other issues. And their feeling was they didn't want an inexpensive tent city created as even a temporary measure, because they kept on saying, but the homeless deserve better. And we would respond, can you give them better?
Yeah.
Well, no, there's no money. Well, then don't prevent them from having this not so good. You know, people's own intentions sometimes really can be very harmful.
It's
Correct.
as simple as be here now and do what you can. I mean, don't try to overdo it. Don't say, oh, I want to do all this and this and this and this and this. If you don't have
can
the
you s-
resources to do it
Exactly.
yourself, keep it something simple like a tent over a house.
Right.
A tent. I mean,
It's so simple. Everything at the camp was donated. In addition, there are so many really good people here.
yeah, they did it.
And they gave and they gave and they gave and they gave willingly and joyfully, and they enjoyed coming down to the camp
Yeah.
to do it.
And if they had space to do it still, they would continue.
Absolutely.
Without corruption, though.
Yeah.
It has to be without corruption and without, that guy that's up at 6 in the morning shaking because he needs a beer and he's going to run out and be all drunk and, have kids around him. And, I mean, it's...
Well, I
A
think
wet
that's
bed
the
center
desire.
needs to be near.
Desperately needed.
Desperately.
They're having a great deal of difficulty finding a location because, of course, nobody wants to have a center that has people who have drug addictions and alcohol problems in their neighborhood.
But that's just a symptom of the
I know.
repression
Of
of our
course it is.
civilization at this point in time.
Of course it is.
There's a difference between the drug and alcohol problem right now. The alcohol problem it's 10 times worse. I have friends who are drug users, not addicts, and then I have people who are just alcoholics. There's no medical alcohol that I see that, take a shot and you're happy. It's more like swill on a bottle and pass out and just be stupid. But then you have the drug addicts that are functioning in life still to go back
Much
and
more
do
so.
it.
That was something new to me, being in the camp, is how I always thought that drugs were probably the major issue. I was very surprised at how much more
It's alcohol.
incompetent people were that were using alcohol as
Oh
opposed
yeah,
to
alcohol
those
is
who were-
terrible. I don't even really like drinking, to be
Yeah.
honest. I can't handle being inebriated. I
Yeah.
don't like not being in control of my body.
I don't want to be like them.
Well, yeah, and honestly, it's just like like I said, man, people in houses, they have their weak nuts. They have their drunk people. They have, I mean, how many homeless people get drunk and drive over somebody? I mean, it just doesn't
Well, and that
happen.
was a
It's
lot
just
of
like
the things that-
DUIs. That's a
Yeah.
housey problem.
That's a
you
lot
know?
of what we try to talk to people about, is we're trying to get the community to be a little bit more honest in how they think about homeless people, first of all, and how they think about themselves.
Exactly, that's the
Because
hard
there's so
one.
much criticism because someone who's on the street, male or female, at risk of being raped or beaten, brutalized by the police, intimidated, so they have a drink or take a pill to go to sleep. How many folks who live in houses, in their nice, warm, heated house after a full meal, climb into a warm bed and take a couple of sleeping pills?
A lot.
And then
A
wake
lot.
up the next morning and take their kids Ritalin.
Yeah.
Take your kids Ritalin.
So it is so much hypocrisy going on because all of us are a little afraid to look at ourselves and then look at other people that we want to criticize in comparison and see what really is the difference.
Yeah, I had a culture shock when I was probably about 21, when I realized that I knew somebody that made $46,000 a year, and I couldn't even fathom like what life would be like with that much money just at your disposal. Like, I couldn't think of anything that anybody could really do with their time that could earn them that much money a year. Like, logically.
Right.
Like, are you kidding me?
The variables are so humongous in
It's-
this country between what people earn.
Yeah.
And of course, that's part of Occupy.
Yeah. When the vice president of B of A is making 106,000, or what, isn't it like 106?
Millions and millions.
I think she makes like 106,000 is what I found.
The one here in Eugene?
Yeah. the one at the
Specifically?
B of A, yeah. The vice president said like 106,000. It's like,
What do you even do with that much money?
tax it and give it,
Yeah.
and give it to people that need to get into a house to get work,
Right, some way of the
Not tax,
redistribution of resources, not just money, but the resources, the access.
Yeah.
They spend all their time punishing homeless people. I can't wait until greed is a punishable offense.
That probably won't
Once
happen
greed
that
is a
soon.
punishable offense, we're not going to have any problems with our economy.
I know.
I mean, it'll be like, oh, let's just take their money. They don't need it.
What do you see coming up in the near future in Eugene? I hear we're looking at more homelessness due to the job markets and the work of the banks and getting people out of their homes.
Eugene's working on getting more jobs through things like casinos and putting money back into the schools. But I mean, what's that casino going to really do to it? It's just going to be vacuuming money out of that hardworking man with an addiction of gambling or is bad on his luck and wants to go try to make a little bit
Right.
of money. I mean, if stuff like that's implemented, like casinos, more lottery stuff, more things that, scam the money out, it's going to be a lot of angry people, and it's going to be a lot of homeless angry people, and that's just if that happens. But if people realize that we're not different, the difference is you see me in a sleeping bag at night, tucked down in a ball. You may think that, I have a big scruffy beard and I'm going to try to rape you, but sadly, I'm just this person that's right here. We're all the same, and once they all realize that, things should fall into place all right, Once people have enough people around them to make them happy, and that they can make happy through conversation, through learning, through picking each other's brains, through testing out different things, and just going through life, they can achieve complete happiness and paradise through what they're doing.
Through their own humanity.
But if it keeps going the same path that it's going right now, sadly enough, there's going to be a lot of pissed off people at the system, and they're going to take it in their own hands to tear it down piece by piece.
Right, and that's why it would seem that if people could a little earlier on recognize the changes that are coming. I mean, they're so obvious to so many of us, but a lot of people really aren't willing to look at those kinds of things and how they impact them.
Well, the way I've seen, it's the last year I watched a show that says that this guy has a prediction that there's going to be a huge change in life in December of 2012. And automatically, I start hearing people say, oh, this guy's a wingnut. He's saying that the world is going to end in 2012. It's just the perspective of how you're taking it, and it's just their attitudes of not wanting to maybe get that book and reading it over what's happened in the past. One man says the world's going to end. A cult says the world's going to end. Another one says the world's going to end. When a man says that the way of your life is going to change in the next year or two, they automatically think, crazy conspiracy theorist says the world's going to come to an end. It's apocalypse. It's not right.
There's a lot of disbelief.
That's not what he said. He said the way you're living is going to change. And it is.
Well, we're seeing it's not. We don't have to wait for December 12th.
No,
December of 2012. It's happening, nearly every day. We've got about a minute left.
Okay.
Is there anything that either of you would like to throw into the conversation or say to the audience with regard to the life of the homeless?
Kind of, but kind of not. It's like okay, so basically, we've already discussed how people are about a paycheck away from being homeless. Well, I want you to consider the fact that, through the Eugene manager and the city council, there is a piece of property that's being built on by the U of O, and they're trying to get a 10-year tax break on that property. Now, all that money would be going to the city. Unfortunately, it's not. And neither is the money that's going into the construction either, because they're using out-of-state construction people. And I think they might actually be using Oregon electricians. But also, the state of Oregon itself made a law to where, I believe it was 3 years ago, we stopped taxing exports on our lumber. And now we're making it readily available for people that own 2 consecutive acres to buy and also rape that land. So
you're basically asking people to think about all these decisions, economic decisions really, that are being made.
Absolutely.
That are cutting down our tax base, cutting down our ability to provide the health and mental services that have been provided.
Yes.
And provide temporary jobs, but not long-term jobs.
Right.
Well, tonight we have been with Sparrow and with Nick, who are members of Occupy and folks who have been living on the streets for a number of years. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
This is Occupy TV. Good night.
Good night.
There's something happening here, but what it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware. I think it's time we stop, children. What's that?